And I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're grateful to Assistant Secretary General Marta Pobi for her briefing. We are keeping a very close eye on developments in Libya. The inability to reach agreement on the draft constitution and to conduct general elections by the deadline established in the roadmap of the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum has brought the country to a state of political uncertainty. This was followed by a deterioration in the security sphere, which spilled over into recent protests and armed clashes. The situation was further complicated by the outstanding question of unifying the economic and financial institutions and the overall drop in living standards of ordinary Libyans. We urge all participants in the political process to preserve the peace and to refrain from any actions that would violate it. In these conditions, it is unacceptable for there to be any incitement to violence or the use of protests for political interests. The inviolability of the civilian population, state and private property must be respected. At this stage, the most important thing is to smooth out disagreements between the Libyan political forces and to help them find areas of convergence on which basis they will be able to continue to confidently move towards unifying the country in the spirit of the ceasefire agreement of October 2020 and UN Security Council Resolution 2570. We firmly believe that the success of the national reconciliation process will be based on it being inclusive and transparent in nature, which means the involvement of all leading political forces of the country, including representatives of the former Jamahiriya. We welcome in this regard the efforts of the African Union and the personal representative of the African Union High-Level Committee on Libya, President of the Republic of Congo, Denis Sassou Nguesso. We support the idea of the African Union to convene a Libyan-wide conference on national reconciliation. For our part, Russia will do whatever it can to help the implementation of this initiative. Mr. President, we welcome the continued efforts of the House of Representatives and the High Council of State to find consensus. The parties have done a vast amount of work, and therefore it is doubly tragic that a definitive solution has not yet been reached. Progress on the constitutional track is the key to ensuring control over the institutional sovereignty and ensuring the territorial integrity of the country. Libyan players are well aware of the danger of sliding back into armed confrontation and are trying to prevent this from happening. We note the symbolic import of the meeting of the Joint Military Commission in the 5+5 format in Tripoli, which is a milestone in terms of unifying the armed forces of the country. Equally important is the agreement on the synchronized, balanced, steady, gradual and step-by-step withdrawal of all non-Libyan armed groups and military units from Libya. We are aware of the importance of the stable oil extraction in Libya. At the same time, we underscore that revenues from the sale of hydrocarbons first and foremost must go to improving the living conditions within the country, the paying of salaries for civil servants, and establishing the uninterrupted supply of electricity. Excessive haste, however, rarely brings positive results. This work must be done in a well-thought-out and balanced way, taking into account possible long-term impacts on the country. Poorly thought-out actions must be avoided. In this regard, we can't ignore the eagerness with which our Western colleagues, first and foremost the American colleagues, are calling for the rapid resumption of the work of the largest Libyan oil fields. Given the overall tensions on global energy markets and the volatility in oil prices, this could be interpreted as them essentially approving attempts to put the urgent tasks of Libyan political settlement on the back burner in favor of their own mercantile interests. And that's how they act in other regions of the world as well. Mr. President, we are approaching a turning point for Libya. How quickly the countries manage to find common ground will determine the future of the country. Approaches of external players need to be consolidated in order to get the country out of the crisis, keeping a check on the players on the political stage and preventing further escalation. Russia agrees with the international consensus that the UN has the central role in the Libyan settlement process. At the same time, we would like to underscore our unchanging support for the efforts of the key element of this configuration, the UN support mission in Libya, whose mandate expires at the end of this week. Very regrettably, for more than 6 months now, it has been acting without leadership, which has a serious impact on its ability to properly fulfill its functions. We're convinced that the UN's emissary must have a mandate from the UN Security Council. Only then will that person have all of the tools they need to fully support the national dialogue, and only then will Libyans fully trust that person. We can't rule out, incidentally, or the fact that the current domestic political deadlock is largely due to the absence of just such a person. We can see that the Secretary General is trying to resolve the issue of the Special Representative. Nevertheless, once again, we urge him to redouble his efforts to find a Special Representative, taking a realistic and balanced approach to the problem. The candidate needs to satisfy the Libyans themselves and regional players and be approved by all members of the Council. We believe that in this situation, the best option would be a technical extension of the UNSMIL mandate for 3 months. This would give the Secretariat the time it so dearly needs. And once the Special Representative is appointed, we can then start talking about further steps, including the adoption of a substantive resolution. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement.